All right, it's real windy, so I got a blanket on top of me. That way I can try to deliver this live. Like I have been saying before, I'm gonna try to go live. If you can't hear me too, say something in the comments. I try to look at the comments as often as possible. But I'm gonna try to go live multiple times throughout the days, share thoughts about things. I want to get back to a space of communication and speaking about some of these issues more. Trying to give. I want to get to a place of trying to help bridge understanding for people that may not understand certain things. So I want to just speak real quick about the importance of Say Their Name Square, which is what we have entitled the area surrounding City Hall, that we have put the memorials for people who have been killed either due to police brutality, due to mass incarceration, or due to racial injustice. I want to say this too. It's a collective effort. Everything that we do out here is done in a collective effort. I am not in charge. I'm not the leader. I'm not the person doing the majority of the work. It is a complete collective effort. And so I say that to say, I believe that we have 15 names up right now on Say Their Name Square. If I'm incorrect about that, I apologize. It's someone else who has taken more of the forefront on that end. So I may be mistaken with the number of names that's on Say Their Name Square. But what I want to do is speak about the importance of these memorials being up and why they're up, for people who may not understand, for people who may just have seen videos of them being torn down, for people who may just have heard word of mouth. The memorials that we have up, it's a picture and the name and the date in which the person was killed. We have them up on South 2nd Street and East State Street on the light poles at the intersection. We have them up on, I believe it's 1st Street and East State Street. And we have them, we have them littered around the East State Street City Hall area. We have a picture. We have the name of the person and the date they was killed. We have them up because we want people that are in this area, which is basically the heart of Rockford at this point. We want them to see the names of these people, to see these people's faces, and we want them for themselves to look up these people's names. We want them for themselves to look up this information and find out more things. And we are trying to do the job of informing people and making people aware of things that they otherwise would not have been informed or aware of. Last night we stayed down here for the 162nd day outside of City Hall, which means it's been 163 days since Tyrus Jones was shot while he was unarmed, which means it's been I believe about 70 days since Denzel Duvant was beat while in police custody while he was unarmed. He was beat while handcuffed, and it was St. Patrick's Day, and people was all up and down East State Street, drinking, enjoying their night, enjoying their evening, which I'm not in a disagreement with. I'm happy that they was able to enjoy their day, enjoy their evening. And as they did so, I would watch people look at the memorials on the light poles and point to the memorials on the light poles. And I'm sure some people pointed and spoke negative things. I'm sure some people pointed and spoke positive things. But I know a lot of people pointed and seen names and pictures of faces of people that they didn't know about before, or dates that they had never crossed their mind that something happened on some of these dates. Even just seeing a picture of Denzel Duvant that we keep up in the area, when people drive and stop at the intersection and stop at the lights, and when people walk up and down downtown and see that picture, they have a conversation and they speak, and that is. Before we can ever get to some of these other changes, we have to get to a place of awareness. And unfortunately, in Rockford, Illinois, if you was to go around and poll people and ask for names of people who have died from police brutality or racial injustice, you'll get a lot of Sandra Bland's, you'll get a lot of Trayvon Martin's, you'll get a lot of Freddie Gray's, a lot of Eric Garner's, a lot of Michael Brown's. And these are all people that are important, and that their lives, and each one of these lives are getting us closer to a place of no longer having to deal with these issues as prevalent as we do. But in Rockford specifically, we have our own names. And this was something that I was guilty of. A year ago, this time a year ago, I could not have told you the names of all 15 of these people that we have on Say Their Name Square. And it's still names of people who have been killed by police in Rockford, Illinois, or who have died in custody in Winnebago County, who names we still don't have up here. And so I couldn't have told you these names. And so I don't have any kind of belief that everybody should know these names. I think that part of the job of the establishment is to keep people from being aware of these issues. That's how it's a saying that the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was making people believe he didn't exist. And this is not to turn this into a religious or a spiritual conversation, but I believe that's something that is constantly done by people in powers, people that do things to oppress and to exploit and to marginalize. Is they try to make you believe that it's not happening. They try to keep you uninformed about it, keep you unaware about it. And so our job outside of City Hall is just to make sure people are aware. This is the heart of Rockford, Illinois. Downtown is the heart of Rockford. Rockford is the heart of Winnebago County. And so we want to make sure when people come into this area and frequent this area that they know all the things that are within the heart of the city. And one of the things that is within the heart of the city is racial injustice, is police brutality, is mass incarceration. Logan Bell is just as much a part of Rockford, Illinois as Tom McNamara is. Carrie Blake is just much a part of the DNA and the culture and the society of Rockford, Illinois as John McNamara is. Jovan Fresco is just as much as the DNA of Rockford, Illinois as Mayor Charles Box was. And the list goes on and on. And so when people come to this area, when people come to Fred's shop, they should see Eddie Patterson. Just as much as Fred Van Vliet is a part of the story of Rockford, Illinois, so is Eddie Patterson. Just as much as Rockford Art Deli is the story of Rockford, Illinois, so is Mikey Guzman. Just as much as is the courthouse, just as much as all of these things, Vintage is a story of Rockford, Illinois, so is Mark Barmore. And so we have to start doing is we have to start having these conversations, and we have to start initiating these conversations in every way possible. We have to change the climate in the city to such where these political things and everything is politics. Everything in your life that you don't control can be used to control you, and that is what politics is. I've said this before and I'll say it again. It's a political decision that the concept of black on black violence, that's a political decision. People being drug addicts, that's a political decision. Lack of education, lack of equal opportunity, lack of equal employment, those are all political decisions. These are all things that are done whether subconsciously or consciously. They are all done on a political level, and they all have political implications. And so we have to start dealing with them on that type of a playing field. And politics is talking. Politics is conversations. Politics is dialogue. Politics is compromise. Politics is understanding. Politics is empathy. All of these different things, equate into politics. And so it's political that we have these names up on Say Their Name Square. It's political that we outside of City Hall with pictures of a young black man being beat up by the police department. It's political that we got that right outside of City Hall's pictures and names and these dates. These dates should never be forgotten. Every time the date comes up for, every time a date comes up for Jamie Cox, the day that Jamie Cox and Eddie Patterson both passed away, the city makes sure to speak about Jamie Cox. When a police dog, they had a big a ceremony for a police dog, a canine that died in the line of duty. That was a big deal. That's political. They want you to know that even just being a police dog, just being the title police being next to an entity makes it so that their death is significant. That something happening to them is significant. And so we have to start doing those same things. We need to start on every time the anniversary of Jamie Cox and Eddie Patterson come up, if the city not going to acknowledge Eddie Patterson, us as a community, we have to acknowledge Eddie Patterson. When the dates of Jovan, of Kerry Blake, of Michael Sago, of Mark Barmore, when these anniversaries come up, we as a community have to honor these people, and we have to, as a community, we need to regularly see these dates and look back and say, what has changed in a year? What has changed in 2 years? What has changed in 3 years? When people walk up and down this area, I want them to see the names of all of these people, see the faces of all of these people, and see all of these different dates, how they span from early 2010s, mid 2000s, all the way into 2018, 2017. These issues are still happening. These issues are still prevalent. And that lets you know that there has been no genuine attempt to make any kind of change. And there will never be a genuine attempt to make any kind of change until we truly get to a point where these issues cannot be forgotten, where these issues cannot be pushed to the side, where things cannot be, where they can't just put Black Lives Matter on a t-shirt and feel like everything is fixed and everything is done. And so it's a lot of cities in America that have returned back to normal. George Floyd was killed. People came out and made had their pictures black on Instagram and wore a few Black Lives Matter shirts, put some Black Lives Matter signs in their yard, went and voted for Joe Biden. And those cities is just back to business as usual. Black people is back to being exploited and oppressed and marginalized at a higher percentage rate than other ethnicities are in those cities. Black people are back to being stagnant and lethargic in a lot of these cities. Communities as a whole are back to being stagnant and lethargic in a lot of these cities. The consciousness that had been awakened and was at a fever pitch has dulled down in a lot of these cities, but that's not true in Rockford. In Rockford, Illinois, since May 30th, it has either continued to stay, the awareness has stayed at the level that it was at then, or there has been ebb and flows where the awareness has went higher. It's not a day that has passed since May 30th in the city of Rockford, Illinois, where somebody is not having a conversation about social injustices revolving around racial injustice, police terrorism, and mass incarceration. Because we haven't allowed for the conversation to dissipate. But it's going to take more than just not allowing for it to dissipate for us to get the change. It's going to take more people being involved. It's going to take more people taking an active role. It's going to take more people seeing, okay, these people are willing to go this far. What can I do to collaborate with them, or what can I do to complement what they're doing in my own way? How can I wage my own revolution? How can I use these revolutionary tactics, this revolutionary ideology, and equate that into my own life? Okay, and so that's why we've taken some of the steps that we've taken. That's why I personally have taken the drastic steps that I've taken, because I know that the longer that I stand here, the longer that I fight for these things, the more consciousness gets awakened. The more people that realize that start to try to figure out where it is that they fit into this equation. The longer that I go trying to figure out which pieces I can put into the puzzle, the clearer that puzzle get, and the easier it is for somebody else to pick up a few pieces and put their piece in there. And that's what it is going to take. It is going to take collective action. It's going to take collective action. That's what a mass movement is. A mass movement is, it develops over time. It develops over years, sometimes even over decades. And different people make different sacrifices and play different roles. And we get to a place where everybody understands that if we are going to get some kind of substantial change, some type of pivotal change, it's no more business as usual. It's no more going back to the status quo. Black people in this nation, poor people in this nation, brown people in this nation, LGBTQ plus people in this nation. There's a host of people in this nation who have historically been oppressed and exploited and marginalized and pushed out of society. And those people have lost, their lives have not been valued at the same clip that other groups' lives have been valued and it's a drastic situation, and it should be treated as a drastic situation the same way that the coronavirus was treated as a drastic situation. I believe personally, and again, I say this all the time, I speak as a black man, and I speak and I try my best to speak for black people in a certain extent. So if you are not black and you watch this, I think that you should just personally, you equate it to whatever struggle that you got. I listen to people all the time who don't have the exact same struggle as me, but they speak about how to struggle, and I can equate that to my own struggle. So I want you to do that. But I'm going to get into a very specific subject matter here, and that's about the drasticness of the situation for black people in America. And I think we have to compare and contrast the manner in which the nation and the globe dealt with the coronavirus and the pandemic of the coronavirus and the pandemic of COVID-19, and how is people still wearing masks in areas to this day, how the manner in which there has been no going back to business as usual. You can look back a year from now, and this nations in other places have completely turned up everything upside down, turned economies upside down, turned employment upside down, have turned societies all the way upside down to try to stabilize and to try to save lives and to try to preserve livelihoods because of the damage that this virus is doing. And there are communities within this nation who have constantly dealt with pandemics, with different, whether it be metaphorical or literal pandemics that have threatened the livelihood and the lives of the people in those communities. What went on in what was going on with segregation and with Jim Crow and with the lack of equal opportunity and lack of equitable opportunity and lack of equitable and equal education and employment for black people during the early 1900s all the way into the civil rights era was a pandemic proportions. And it wasn't until they started treating it like it was of pandemic proportions and not letting things go back to business as usual, and people that were maybe in different fields abandoned those fields to go to be part of that civil rights movement. It wasn't until then that we started making real progress, that things started really getting changed, that we started really we started seeing some of these things some of these laws and some of these amendments that they had changed the letter of. We started seeing the spirit of it actually change when people realized it was going to take a concerted effort, a conscious effort, when they realized it was going to take multiple sacrifices, humongous sacrifices, and so the same thing happened. The same concept happened once we got to the era of we got to the Black Power movement. When they were attacking Black Panthers, but just being black and speaking about black power and black pride could get you ostracized from society and have you in prison for crimes you didn't commit. When they were shipping black people disproportionately over to Vietnam, and they was coming back with heroin addictions and with post-traumatic stress syndrome, that was also when black community and poverty, the war on poverty had been exchanged for the war on drugs. That was also a time of dire need in the black communities and the poor communities, and that needed to be treated as if it was a pandemic. That needed a no more business as usual mindset. For some people it was like that, and for some people it wasn't. It was a lot of black people at that time and brown people in that time and poor people at that time who were starting to be allowed to be into mainstream society, and being allowed to be in mainstream society for some of those groups that have been marginalized for so many years, they forgot about the other people that were still marginalized, the other people that were still oppressed. Integration started to come in, and it started to be that direness and that no more business as usual mind state started to dissipate some as people started to make some of these small gains. But then the same problem comes back when you get to the 80s, and when crack cocaine starts to be in areas, and cocaine in general, the government floods it into inner city communities at a disproportionate rate. That was also another time of dire proportions, another time where things needed to be treated like as if it was a pandemic in these communities, in these impoverished communities, and it wasn't treated like that. A time when addiction needed to be treated as a healthcare crisis. And, in the crack epidemic gets you real close to when you get to the HIV and the AIDS epidemic, something else that disproportionately affected inner city communities, or poor communities, or communities of color, that needed to be treated with the same direness that they've treated COVID with. All of these things that we just went through, all of these different stages, segregation and Jim Crow, Vietnam and heroin epidemics, and the disproportionate treatment of police, because this was again in the the 60s and the 70s, that's when you start to see the heavy militarization of the police. That's when you start to see the enforcement of more prisons being built, more jails being built, more police being employed, them trying to integrate police forces. And all of these things were not things that were being done for the betterment of these communities or the betterment of society. They were being done for capitalistic reasons. They were being done for fascist reasons, for reasons of control, for reasons of power. And they needed to, that was a situation we still deal with today, the fruits of some of those seeds that was being planted then that were not dealt with properly. But I say that to say that needed to be dealt with the same way as a pandemic, as an emergency, as a no more business as usual type of mindset, and it wasn't. And then that gets us to the crack epidemic and the HIV epidemic, and those things were not dealt with the same sense of urgency. And then that gets you to the 90s with the crime bills. And the crime bills, and how the crime bills destroyed generations of black and brown families, generations of poor families, generations of low-income families, who these new laws completely destroyed those areas, completely destroyed those communities. That needed to be dealt with in as a pandemic type crisis, no business as usual type of mindset. All the time you'll hear, when people speak about black people or speak to black people, speak to young black men, young black boys, you hear them talk about needing to keep families together and black men needing to be in their children's lives. But what you don't hear them speak about is how black men started to be torn out of their families' lives and torn out of their children's lives, and how that cycle began. How many things are cyclical in life. How I read a book one time where it spoke about 4 different generations of black men. One generation of black men, he was his great grandfather was a slave. The next generation, he got caught into the black codes and ended up in jail. If you don't know about the black codes, go look up the black codes. He got caught in the black codes after around Reconstruction era, after Reconstruction era and after the end of slavery, and that caught him into being in jail. So now you got one black man who was enslaved, who then had a child who did not have to deal with slavery but had to deal with the black codes, which forced him into jail and onto the chain gang, which was just updated slavery. And then his son, who had to deal with Jim Crow and segregation issues, which led to him ended up being in jail for violating segregation laws. And then after that, a son that ended up in jail in the 90s dealing with mass incarceration and the crime bill. And it just went through how each one of these different sets of black men each dealt with the unjust and prejudicial laws at the time that ushered them into the prison system, into the legal system. And it shows you how these things become cyclical. I don't know my father personally. I don't have any kind of a relationship with him, but I do know things about him, and I know that he has spent time in jail before. So that means my father was in jail. I've been in jail. Completely separate issues and separate instances. I've been in jail. So now, and what's the likelihood that my son ends up in jail? And then that's 3 generations. Or if I try to trace it back, would I be able to find out that his father was in jail? That's that becomes, once you start going down and the same thing starts to happen to generation after generation in the same kind of communities, you start to get to a place where you realize that these are societal issues that need to be addressed. These are societal issues that need to be adjusted. And until we address the societal issues that lead to people going to jail, until we address the societal issues that lead to people having addictions, that lead to people committing robberies and certain crimes, until we address the materialism that's deep-rooted in this society that leads people to feel like if they don't have money or if they don't have possessions, then they're worthless. When we have to start addressing things like that, and then as we address those things, we can peel back the layers and we can start fixing the amount of robbery crimes that we have, or the amount of drug dealing that we have, or the amount of drug addiction that we have. But until we do the heavy lifting to fix the things that are psychological barriers, the things that you're trying to make as legal barriers, they're never gonna do nothing. All they're gonna do is just make sure that cities can make money off of putting people in jail, make sure governments can make money off people being in jail. That's it. That's all we gonna do. We in a place now where there is no such thing as crime prevention. There's crime punishment. That's it. They're not out here trying to make sure people not selling drugs. They just trying to catch a certain amount of people that's selling drugs and be able to put them in jail to meet their quota and to keep the jails filled up to a certain amount. All right, we outside.